Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's video, we are going to try painting a Gundam model kit using only acrylic type paint markers. Is probably something that you would not have expected to heard on this channel, as you guys know that I typically don't like using paint markers. I also don't use acrylic paints, but I got this big set of acrylic paint markers here from Artix, and we're gonna give it a try. But before we get to actually painting on a kit, there are a series of tests that I want to try out with these, just to basically test kind of how they work in different circumstances, under different conditions. Like, are you able to use them with different top coats, with different panel liners, with different things like that? Basically, how useful are they for what we're typically working on, like for painting Gundam models and stuff like that, maybe for painting entire parts versus just painting little details and all that. So that's what we're going to get into for today's video. We're going to be trying out the markers, just kind of running a few tests first, and then we'll try painting an entire kit with them and see how that goes. So let's go ahead and get into it for today's video. So let's check out the product here. The box has 60 markers inside, and you can see here on the back all of those colors. So basically a pretty full color range, and just based on the size of this box, I can't imagine that the markers are terribly large, just if there's 60 markers in here. So you can see they're laid out this way. Got a little card here, and fortunately they're in trays. I was worried that I would have to be digging through here, but it's actually what looks like probably 4 trays, and they are kind of separated by colors here. Mostly got kind of pink and browns, maroons, kind of your warmer colors here, all the way to white. Your greens and blues here, going to then some more just kind of grays, and I guess like a good mix of kind of a lot of stuff there in that bottom drawer. So, but there you go. Once everything's out, here's a look at all of the colors that we have included. And so first things first, as far as the storage goes, it does say to keep them stored horizontally, not vertically. I think that's just for just keeping the ink inside proper. So let's just take a random color here to start off, and they don't seem to have names on the colors, just numbers. This is T585, so we're meant to shake it up first good and well, and hopefully you guys can hear that there does seem to be an agitator inside that's mixing it up. And because this is the first use, I want to make sure to kind of mix it up maybe even more so than usual, just because, you know, maybe after it's been used a couple times, maybe you don't have to keep mixing it up quite so much every single time. But the thing about with these being brush tip instead of felt tip then is that you don't have to press them down to get the ink flowing. It seems that the ink's kind of already flowing on here just straight out of the pen. So I've got a couple of just spare parts here, one light and one dark, just to kind of see how the coverage is. Now obviously on a white surface like this, you would expect that the coverage would be pretty good. The first reaction is straight out of the pen. You can see it's not perfectly smooth, but it'll just depend, kind of, we'll see how much that levels out as it dries. It's supposed to be pretty fast drying, so I'll give this a few minutes and see what that does. And I'll just try it against a darker surface and see how that looks. It does still look pretty bright. That is for sure. I think once it dries, you can also go over it with another coat if you just wanted to make sure that you've got a really opaque covering on there, right? And so coming back to this now after about 10 minutes, you can see that it dried pretty smooth there, and also kind of has a matte finish, doesn't have a very glossy finish or anything like that as well. And so I want to try just seeing then if we can go over this and see if going over it again is going to reactivate the paint, in which it'll be messy, or if it will just give us a nice smooth second coat over the top of this. I'm going to go in a different direction here as well. And it certainly looks to be the case that it's not reactivating the paint, which is good. And it should be, again, when it's wet, it looks like a bit bubbly, grainy there, but once that's dry, and then especially once you have top coat then over the top of that, it seems like it's actually going to work out quite well. And then for this dark piece, one thing that I want to try too is blending the colors. So this is that same color here. I'm going to use some right there, and then going to this lighter shade here. It's actually kind of very good, Miku colors. Actually, let's see how well that's going to blend. So I mean, it's kind of blending, sort of. And we'll go to an even lighter blue here. I'm not sure if it's blending so much. Then it might be good to actually try using a brush for this. And it might be an issue with my technique as far as blending that goes, but it's going to blend to a degree, I think. But that said, with having such a wide variety of colors available, I think if there was a specific color that you wanted, something between these two colors, you can probably find one that's here. You might not necessarily need to blend them. All right, for the next test then, I got a couple of spare pieces. We're going to use this more pink color here, T333. And for this, I want to test just how this is going to react with other different products. So I'm gonna guess that using this on top of either enamels or lacquers is not gonna be an issue whatsoever. But you can see the one issue that I'm having here with this is that on top of a gloss surface, well, what is just the bare plastic, which is fairly glossy, you're not getting like a good solid coverage, and that's just because there's really not much for the ink to like attach to. So I think this is definitely something where you're gonna have to go in for a second coat, or what would probably be the best option actually would just be to use a matte coat on the product first, and just having that little bit of a rougher surface would probably be easier for you to make sure that the paint is gonna stick on there. So let me go ahead and try that here real quick. Coming back a few minutes later after it's dried, and I think we can go ahead and just put another coat on this, and that should take care of it pretty well. But then I've also got a piece here that I went ahead and sprayed some matte top coat on, so we'll be able to kind of see the difference how this goes on top of something that has a matte top coat surface, and definitely seems to be much better results. You can see the paint's definitely gripping on there well. It's not like kind of pulling back away from the surfaces like it was on the glossy, or like just on the bare plastic basically. So it does seem like painting over the top of surface that has either top coat or surfacer would probably be a good idea actually as well. So here's a piece, for example, that I just went ahead and sprayed with some black surfacer. It's a white piece. And with that surfacer over the top of it, that should give us obviously a good surface to paint on. That's kind of the whole, like, one of the points of surfacer. And this is also painting like a large area. This is assuming that you're going to be painting like a whole kit, which we will try. And as you can see here, just kind of very loosely brushing that on there, and not even like trying to cover the entirety of the part, just as for a test here. It's definitely going to take a couple of coats, because one thing that I want to avoid doing is the paint pooling. Like if I'll try it here, just like intentionally laying the paint on like super thick. If I just try like going over this a couple times while the paint's still wet, it's just going to be like moving a bunch of wet paint around on here and probably just pooling it up in certain areas. But if I tried to go for getting like a more full coverage without letting it dry in between layers, it's probably not going to work out. But it's honestly not going as bad as I expected that it would. It's definitely going to be kind of tricky. You will have like a bit of paint pooling somewhere along the way. There you go. It's not like perfect opacity. You can still see some lines there. It's going to take a second coat, but it actually didn't do as bad as I thought it would. I was expecting it to just be like a big pooling mess, but it's not too bad. So I'll give that a minute to dry and we'll check it out. This is our piece that had top coat over the top of it, and you can see it's not perfect coverage here. So we'll try giving this a second coat and see how that looks. It's looking pretty good in terms of the opacity. And the other important thing too is that I'm not seeing brush strokes. So it seems to level out pretty well that you're not seeing the strokes so long as you're kind of being careful with it. So there's that. We'll give that a couple minutes to dry as well. And then our piece here that had the black surfacer on it, you can see this side here was actually where I thought it would be a big mess. It's actually not turning out to be all that much of a mess at all, but again, just kind of going in an opposite direction. So the first layer I did like top to bottom, and this one I'll do kind of side to side. And even if it ends up taking a third layer, it doesn't seem to be like adding all that much texture. See, it looks like it's drying pretty smoothly on there. Now, another thing that I definitely want to try is seeing how well you can panel line over the top of this. So like if we had this part painted, and I'm also using the tip to fill in those kind of deeper panel lines on here, and it does seem to be working pretty well. So this part has a lot of detail, and it's on the bottom of the feet, which, you know, some people panel line the bottom of the feet and some people don't, understandably. But if you did want to use panel liner over the top of this, how well is it going to work? Now, I'm going to guess that if you tried using like either lighter fluid or enamel thinner or whatever you use typically for cleaning up your panel lining, probably that's not going to work well on top of this. So we're going to want to top coat this. So let's say, for example, you're in the situation that you're using this to paint a part, which is what we will ultimately be doing here, assuming that this works well. And then once our part is painted, I'll give this a little bit to dry. I'll try spraying some top coat on it. And then with the gloss top coat on top of there to protect the paint, we should be able to do our panel lining over the top of that without any issues. So let me just go ahead and prepare that and we'll try it. Okay, and so once that dried, I went ahead and sprayed some gloss top coat on there. And number one, it didn't like ruin the paint, so that's good to know. You can see it's not like perfectly smooth there. That's just the product of that gloss top coat on there though. I mean, a glossy finish is gonna show off any slight imperfections, like even that much more. So just to kind of see how that's gonna look. But let's try it with some Tamiya panel line accent color here and see what happens. I have no doubt that because of that gloss coat on there, that we're not gonna have any issue getting the panel liner on. And since we're trying it out, let's also try it here on this piece, which does not have any top coat on it, and just kind of see what the reaction is going to be if you tried it without. And because I want to go with like the least harsh thing that I can, I'm going to try just using some of this gun primer solvent, which we'll see how this does cleaning it up without messing up the paint at all. And I mean, it's not bad. If you just had a tiny bit of it, I think you could maybe get away with that. But yeah, it's not really ideal. Now on our part here that is gloss coated, this should be no problem then. So trying this just with the solvent first, and it's working pretty well to clean up the panel liner, but what we really need to check is not that it's cleaning up the panel liner, but that it's not messing up the paint underneath. And I would say, at least for that top half there, it does look like it's working pretty well in that it's not messing with the paint at all. The paint seems pretty protected by that top coat. But this bottom half then, I want to try cleaning this up just with some lighter fluid, which is a little bit more harsh, but this is more typically what I use for cleaning up panel lining. I just find it to be kind of quicker, simpler. And it also seems to be working pretty well. And again, the paint is protected with that gloss coat on there. So I would say that's a pretty good success. Now, another thing we can test too is say if you only wanted to paint, you know, certain small details, if you so happen to like mess up a bit and you need to clean it up, you know, what's going to work well for cleaning it up without making a mess, and what products are going to work well for that. So let's try here. It's like for this part here, I kind of intentionally went a little overboard with that. So I think probably the easiest way would just be to just use your knife and just kind of gently just scrape it away from areas where you didn't want the paint to be. And you can see that kind of works decently well, but let's try it again, cleaning up around the edges of this side a little bit with the solvent. And because there's no top coat on here, I really kind of don't know exactly how the solvent is going to react with just kind of directly on the paint, but seems to be working quite well. Yeah, that's a pretty good success. So I would say solvent is a good, yeah, it's a pretty good success. So I would say that this solvent is a good option for that, but let's also just try it here on this piece. Let's just try it with just some water, because this is water based, so it should just work with just water on the Q-tip here. And I gotta say, this also does seem to work really well. Now, the one thing about water compared to the solvent, it seems like water is just kind of wetting and reactivating the paint a little bit, so it's a bit messier, whereas I think the solvent was doing a better job of basically just kind of just wiping it up into the Q-tip. But that does seem to work as a nice option there. And that does give me an idea for one more thing to test here. If we take this piece that we were trying to blend before with just a brush that's just wetted with water, how well the water might work to blend our colors a little bit here. If we get this wet, let's see. Well, okay, it doesn't seem to be really doing much of anything, and it doesn't even seem like it's really reactivating the paint. So maybe this has just been too dry, and it's really only been like 30 minutes or something. It hasn't really been all that long, but it doesn't seem like it's doing anything to blend the paint more. So actually, there is one final thing that I do want to test here, and that is just the resiliency. One of the reasons why I typically don't use acrylic paint is just because I worry about the paint chipping. And so here I have a couple pieces, a couple bits of paint. Oof, and number one, I don't like how that feels on my fingertip. Let's just try it with this piece of bamboo skewer. And as you can see, just like scratching it, it does seem to be scratching off this one, which we did 2 layers of, that kind of blue-green color there. A little bit, ooh, I don't like the sound of that. It is still kind of scratching off there if you're not careful with it. But if we go to our piece with the top coat here, we'll see if it's the same story. And just applying like the same amount of pressure on there, and it's not doing anything. If I really try to scratch it, then I can scratch through the top coat, and it is scratching that off. So let's try here on this part that had the surfacer on there first. So if you've got surfacer on there, that should act as a good layer kind of in between, and you can see it's not scratching off right away like it was when the paint's just directly on the plastic. So that using surfacer does seem like that's going to be a good way to make sure that the paint is actually staying on there better. It doesn't scratch. You can see it is still going to scratch a little bit, and then you can see it's scratching down actually to the surfacer layer, not to the plastic layer. That black, that's the black surfacer. The part is actually white. So the surfacer is doing a good job. And you could actually maybe use this to your advantage if you want to do some like weathering, actually physically do some kind of like reductive chipping here, kind of like along your edges, to do something like that for your paint off the edges of your part, something like this. So anyway, that could definitely be a little bit of a problem for us, but that just means that we're going to have to be particularly careful not to scratch the paint. And that's kind of one of the reasons, like I said, why I don't typically like using acrylic paints for my Gundam kits anyway. So let's try painting an entire kit here. So I'm going to be using just the entry grade Strike Gundam here. I'm going to do a little bit of sanding on this also, just to give us a little bit better surface prep. As you can see, one thing that seems like it's going to be important, especially if you're going to be trying to paint like an entire kit, is your surface prep. So I'm going to give it a little bit of sanding. I'm going to give it some surfacer on there as well, and I'm just going to use white surfacer for this, just because I'm wanting to do like a kind of pastel-y, because these are very colorful. So I feel like it would make sense to do a nice like kind of pastel-y, colorful, kind of vibrant color scheme on this. So I'm going to get a white surfacer base, and then after painting we'll do some panel lining and all that. And so this kit actually doesn't have a whole lot of details and panel lines on it in order to panel line, but we'll give that all a try. Other than that, as I'm getting into the painting, guys, if you want to check out some of these markers for yourself, there'll be links in the video description to their Amazon page there. There's a bunch of different sets available. This set of 60 retails for around $50 when it's not on sale, so that makes it less than $1 per marker. Definitely worth trying out. But yeah, they have a number of different sets available, just kind of depending on how many markers you want or what kind of like color range you want. So you can check those out all there on Amazon. So check out that link in the video description for more info. And after just a little bit of work here on this, here is my finished result. As you can see, I went with a pretty funky color scheme on this. I figure we've got all these nice bright colors here, might as well do something a little different, make it nice and colorful here for this one. So I went with a very unique color scheme here, as you can see. Then I went ahead and sprayed some gloss top coat on there just to protect the acrylic paint, and then I went in and did a little bit of panel lining and just a couple little spots here and there, added a couple decals here and there as well, and then just some matte top coat to finish all off, and that's pretty much it. So very simple, fun little project. I can't say that these markers are going to be replacing my airbrush anytime soon, that's for sure, but definitely fun to play around with, and these are great. And you can obviously use these on more than just model kits. You can just use them actually just on paper or canvas or whatever else. I actually might in the future try using these on some like gashapon, like small scale little like model kits, figures type stuff. I think they might be kind of fun to work on with that. The pen brush tips are fairly fine, so you can get into pretty small details, but another option would just be to like try to let out some paint and then just use like a really fine brush too if you really need like really fine details. But overall, I found these pretty fun to work with. As we learned in the tests, my recommendation to you guys would be to either spray some surfacer or top coat, matte top coat down on the surface that you're going to be painting on first before using the markers, just so the markers have a little bit more to grab onto, and then also spray some top coat afterwards just to kind of lock in the paint, just with these being acrylic paint. They're not going to be super strong on their own, but just some top coat over the top just helps to protect them and seal them in and everything, and then you can go in and do whatever else you want to over the top of them. And I think you're also going to find these particularly useful just for picking out small details on your kits as well. If you're planning on using them for Gunpla, I mean, you can just use them for just all kinds of other art, of course. But if you just want to add a couple little small bits of color onto your kits, these can be a really great, simple, like quick option. Just, you know, reach for the proper color that you need and just go ahead and shake it up the marker, put it on there, and you're kind of good to go. It's as simple as that. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And if you guys have any other experience using paint markers, you know, let me know in the comments what that's been like as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, doing something a little bit different from usual. If you did, make sure to leave a like, and if you're not yet subscribed, of course you can subscribe there just below the video as well. I really appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much. Until next time, see y'all later. Bye guys.